Hey guys, thank you so much for joining in on tonight's webinar. I am so excited that you're here. This is such an important topic. We are all dealing with so many things right now. And so if there's anything that I can do to try to help you overcome a little bit of overwhelm, then it's an absolute honor to do so. Look, I know that things have been absolutely crazy right now, and I just want to put everything up front for you about what I'm trying to accomplish with tonight's webinar. First and foremost, I want you to know that I'm not trying to sell you anything. I've sat through webinars before that seem so interesting, and I keep waiting and waiting and waiting for the punchline. It never comes. They string you along for 45 minutes, and then eventually they're like, buy my magic pill or my wonderful solution or whatever. We're not going to do that today. In fact, there's no opportunity to buy anything that I offer. So that's not what this is about. I don't want to take from you. I want to give a little bit of my time. I want to offer some of the amazing people that are in my network and try to arm you with some tools to really overcome overwhelm, busyness, and really just that feeling that you have in the pit of your stomach that just makes things feel a little bit harder right now. And I get it. I'm there with you too. So before we dive into anything, we need to get our heads on straight. I tried to time this so that hopefully you had time to take care of your family if you have one, make sure everyone had dinner. Hopefully you too. Got any babies or little ones to bed that you had to. So you probably haven't really had a chance to catch your breath yet. So literally, I want you to try to do that right now. I know that this feels a little bit cheesy, but please just roll with me. I want you to just stop for a second and please take a really deep breath in. Okay, can you do it one more time? Okay, I don't know about you, but I needed that. With all of the craziness and the weird way that time is just crisscrossing and blending into itself right now, since working from home and having so many things shut down, I really am forgetting to consciously breathe. I know that I have a few fitness instructors dialed in today. Hello, ladies from Pure Barre. And you guys are probably a little bit better at this than some of the rest of us, but it's something that we all, I think, can be a little bit more careful about bringing back into our everyday lives, even when you're outside of a fitness studio. So thank you for taking a moment and doing that. Now, as I introduce you to the two speakers that I have joining me today, which I cannot wait for you to meet, they're both going to be talking about the brain science behind both communication and happiness. One of the things that's important to remember is the way that we think and feel absolutely drives an amount of the way that we show up in our actions. So we have to make sure that we have enough oxygen in our brain so that we can think a little bit more clearly. Also, by stopping, pausing, and taking a deep breath, we feel just a little bit calmer. And that's an absolute gift when you're trying to have conscious communication, which is a book that our communications expert actually wrote. That is the title, Conscious Communications. And it also helps you kind of dictate your own happiness, which is the next topic that we're going to touch on as well. So I'm really, really excited to introduce you to Mary Shores and Petry Leanse. They're incredibly accomplished, amazing women. You're going to learn a lot from them tonight. But here's what I'm doing. I've got to be conscientious of your time because you're busy and you're overwhelmed. So I wanted to make sure that this was short and sweet. So here's what I did. I had awesome, awesome conversations with both Mary and Ellen. You'll kind of see me just like being totally in the moment with them, and I look really goofy because I'm so into everything that they're saying. But I had to cut it down a little bit for this webinar so that I wouldn't keep you here all night. But because you did sign up in advance, I'm going to send you a link that will make the full interviews with both Mary and Ellen available just to you. I'm not going to be posting the full length anywhere else. So that's something that you get as a thank you for showing up and being here. That'll come directly to your email. So if you want to hear more about the things that we were discussing, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Okay, so let's dive into some of our interviews.
What matters most in a changing world is the people I love. And maybe there are some things about that prompt, that like goal of happiness that I was told if I kept striving, I'd ultimately reach. You know what? I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but maybe that isn't the goal I really want after all. I mean, we have to at least explore that. And it doesn't mean that you abandon everything or throw it away, but even softening that pressure that we put on ourselves by 5% is, with practice and with repetition, enough to change our entire experience. And we know that through the science of emotion and the science of perception. A 5% change in the way we perceive things is a complete reinvention of our reality. That's just science.
Mm.
So.
And I want to dig in on that a little bit because you and I have had a really, probably one of like the top talks that I've had about leadership was with you, because I love that you come at it from such a holistic approach. So as we're talking about kind of leading our own lives and facing this bump of, and maybe it's a little more than a bump, it feels like a huge chasm of overwhelm and stress, we kind of want to start with the end in mind, right? So if we want to take it from a very leadership strategic planning session, and we're starting with kind of a type of end state in mind of, okay, I don't want to take on more than one human should, because I still am one human. And I want to kind of aim for maybe 5%, 10% happier. How do you even reconcile that in your own mind? So what is that happier, and how can you create a definition? And of course they're going to be personal since everyone's different, but how do you even start to chisel away to be like, no, this is a good authentic definition of happiness and not that really manufactured spiel that's been sold to me?
Wonderful. Yeah, it's great. Remember a minute ago we talked about brain chemicals, and in the brain's reward system there are a variety of different neurotransmitters that create the experience, the feeling of happiness. And a really important place to begin is with this statement. This is neuroscience in a nutshell, and it says your brain will do more of whatever it's doing right now. Your brain is, and has been since before you were born, a machine that documents the reality that you have survived and tells you to keep doing more of that. So your brain has put you under a trajectory that's gotten you here. And it is not good at saying, try a new thing or consider this alternative, because it has no evidence that that got you here. And its job is to make you survive, right? Now, if your brain will do more of whatever it's doing right now, we've already established earlier in this conversation that our brains are doing more of wanting that new, more, now, and mind, because they're influenced by these external signals that say this is what a good life looks like. What a good life looks like, when we really stop and think about it, and we know this through the studies of people, at the end of their lives on their deathbeds, nobody died. I don't think anybody's ever, none that I've read has ever died saying, I wish I'd finished decorating my living room, or I wish I'd had a better house, a bigger house, something like that. They go, I wish I'd told people I love them more. I wish I'd been true to my real self, to who I am. So I break human happiness down into something that's not about the dopamine rewards that are so easy to find in social media and shopping. And, my goodness, I like something pretty as much as anybody else does, but you can kind of hear the ding, ding, ding in your head of like it giving that easy reward. But the deeper rewards come with reflection and consideration. And even as I talk about it, I'm not doing it on purpose, but my hands move down more into my body, where we really feel that satisfaction, where we really feel love, where we feel the heart's intelligence. And the heart does have a type of intelligence we don't fully understand yet. But that doesn't mean it's less important. We feel it, right? And the only things that seem, I don't want to say the things that seem to create real human satisfaction, really that sense of a good life, a life well lived, alignment with purpose, fall into 3 categories. And interestingly, these 3 categories, you can look at them, they occupy, the areas that process them occupy the biggest parts of the human brain. They are the parts that differentiate us. Other animals have them, trust me, but they are the parts that really differentiate our brain. And they fall into 3 categories. One is the sense of belonging. Let's talk about that in a moment, but relationships, right? Those are our social centers. Contribution, the generative part of the brain that allows us to use our intelligence in worthy ways to make an offering of our intelligence to the world. And then growth, becoming a better version of ourselves. Now let's even look at belonging, because we are emotional beings. And in fact, the emotions really determine the first steps in all of our perception. belonging has become a competition. We've talked about that in this conversation already. We have to prove all the time that we're worthy of belonging on the rules of the society, which are constantly being raised by the media that bombards us. And when we look at the stress that competition is awesome when correctly channeled, but when it's constant and when you never feel like you really win, it creates chemicals in the brain that break down into the stressors, cortisol and other sorts of things that actually could get into a long talk about how they weaken our immune system. They actually they change the way that we perceive things, and they make it harder for us to use these stress chemicals, the faculties of the prefrontal cortex, which is our highest human cognition. And this is where we do things like longer term planning, presence, mood regulation, if-then scenarios. A well-known author, a behavioral economist, Nobel Prize, level sort of person, wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And although he does not really map it to the different cognitive functions of the mind, he talks about the routine thinking, which is what we think we should do and we're sure we're right about. But then the more mindful and slow thinking that we have to actually activate. And brain, survival mechanism as it is, resists that activation because it is more expensive from a glucose, which is the fuel of the brain perspective. So it wants us to use the reactive mind all the time. And your brain will do more of whatever it's doing right now. So using the reactive mind locks us in to the patterns of reacting and reacting and reacting.
Oh, I hope you got so much out of that interview with Ellen. She is such an inspiration. Do follow her on Twitter at Cheptoom and check out her book, The Happiness Hack. Okay, let's just move right along and jump right into the next interview with communications expert Mary Shores. So that brings up an interesting point, because we do have to communicate to others about how we're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. But just the thought of having some of these conversations makes me itchy. I just get nervous thinking about, okay, now after the crazy day and I feel exhausted and I feel stressed, now I have to go and have yet another hard conversation. So how can we kind of prepare ourselves to handle a difficult conversation so we can go in there and actually be effective instead of just angry?
Here is the answer. One of the things that we need to understand, and I do teach a 3-step communication process. It's the steps are: step 1 is validate, step 2 is plant a seed of happiness, and step 3 is always use an action statement to keep the conversation flowing and talk in terms of solutions. Okay, so when we're anticipating a stressful conversation, and typically we know ahead of time why that conversation is going to be so stressful, the thing to do is right before you go into the conversation, understand that your job is to listen more than you talk. And what you want to do is, number one, after you have listened, okay, you want to listen to what the other person has to say, and you want to make sure that you validate every word of it. You can even just say the words like, hey, I hear you, I understand. Now, in order to open up this conversation a little bit further, we can say something like, how are you feeling about ... Okay, because in this hypothetical situation, it could be somebody you're communicating with at work. It can be somebody you're communicating with in your home, but you fill in the blank, okay? So my job is very financially oriented because I own a debt collection agency. And so debt is a really touchy subject right now. And one of the questions that I, as a leader in that industry, have been telling people to use is, how do you feel about your finances over the next few weeks? Okay, now that's a powerful question, right? And so, but let's say I was a personal trainer. I might say, how are you feeling about your at-home workout routine right now? And then you pause and you listen without interruption, without a but, without a however, and without an unfortunately. It's really difficult to listen without judgment and without interruption. Okay. So if it's a personal conversation, you can say, how are you feeling about, and then insert the subject matter. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So now I did this at work because I've got a lot of people, returning to work. I've got some people who want to still work at home. So I'm just saying, like, how are you feeling about returning to work with amid everything that's going on in the world? And it's not just COVID anymore, right? It's much more than COVID. So how are you feeling about returning to work amid COVID and the civil unrest? And I get back these beautiful answers where people are talking about that they're feeling heartbroken, that they're feeling frustrated, that they're feeling overwhelmed. And here's the thing that is so important about recognizing those feelings is because the moment that someone feels safe enough to give you a vulnerable answer, that is the moment that the heart starts to open up or breaks wide open, okay? And when the heart opens, that is the first step to deep healing. And you know what? This might be a business relationship. You can heal someone even if you are strictly professional colleagues, because it's in those moments of connection that is one of the most basic human needs. The number one human need is to feel heard and understood. Okay? That's an emotional need. It's very, very important. So I love that question the most because it gives us the opportunity to learn how to open up the conversation by asking a feeling question. And it gives us the opportunity to deeply, deeply listen. Listen without interruption, listen without judgment, and listen without the but, however, or unfortunately. It's just saying, I hear you. I hear you. I understand.
I love that. That was Mary Shores. She has so much information on how to communicate effectively. Find her on most social at Mary_Shores. Definitely check out her book, Conscious Communications. You're going to get a lot out of it. Okay, my friends, now, as you know, all good things must come to an end, and I promised you I would keep this short and sweet. So let's start wrapping this webinar up. Really quickly, I just want to give you a review of one point from each speaker that really, really made an impact on me. And I've had a little bit of time to think about these things since I spoke to both Ellen and Mary. So regarding happiness, I love the idea of just lessening the load of your expectations for yourself by just 5%. And let me tell you, it took a few weeks for that to really make an impact on me. And the more that I've thought about it, that's just mind-blowing, and it makes an enormous difference. So I want to challenge you to lessen the load of your expectations for yourself by just 5%, as Ellen recommended. And then thinking about communication, Mary's comment that the moment someone feels safe enough to give you a vulnerable answer, that's the moment that the heart starts to open up. What an amazing consideration. So now, as a leadership coach, I'm going to challenge you to try to apply some of these things that we just learned. So what I want you to do is set some really clear, really healthy goals for yourself that will help you minimize your overwhelm. Okay, so as a leadership coach, here's one of the things that I do almost every single time I meet with a group or an individual. I help them come up with really, really good goals. Goals that are a little bit of a stretch, but goals that they can reach. And I think that you can reach just about any goal that you really want to, as long as you have a good plan in place about how you're going to pursue them. So here's the thing. It's all about taking steps in the direction to reach those really big goals. So you probably can't reach the goal of having perfect harmony between communication at home and work and perfect happiness. And we know there's no work-life balance, but let's just even say that you could do it. And maybe that you actually wanted balance, because honestly, I don't. I want a little more time for my life than I want to be working. But say that was the goal. That's okay. It's not all going to happen in one day or in 1 week, and you can't beat yourself up over that. You can, but you shouldn't. So a better way is to consider just coming up with little teeny tiny pieces of a goal that you can accomplish every single week. And it just helps get you in the habit of taking action in a really conscious and directed way. So from the skills that you learned today from Mary and Ellen, pick one or two of your favorites. Pick the ones that align most with the big picture goals that you have for your life. Take those skills and then break them down into itty bitty little tasks. itty bitty little tasks, things that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can reach that day, even if you're doing homeschooling and you have 3 conference calls and who knows what else is going on, right? The dog has to go to the vet, whatever happens in your life, things that you know, no matter what, you're actually going to be able to hit that goal. Let me give you a really simple example. So when it was tax season, I have kind of complicated taxes because I have a business, and so there's all these different elements, and my systems aren't perfectly in place, so shame on me, but they're not. So I knew one goal that I could hit one week is just to take my tax folder out. Literally, that was it. Get the tax folder on my desk, and that was it. So the tax folder was on my desk one week. And then it was, reconciling, certain numbers and making sure certain things were done each week. It was really small, really bite-sized. And before I knew it, it was all done. It was all done. Everything was to the accountant and it was off my plate altogether. But it was things as teeny tiny as take the folder out of the drawer and put it on the desk. And it's the same thing with anything else. If you want to improve your mindset with communication, it can just be the tiniest thing. Like maybe before I try to talk to my partner about what's so hard with balancing our time and our obligations right now, I'm just going to remember to take a deep breath before we talk. That's it. For this week, all I'm going to try to do is just take a deep breath before we talk. When you're trying to set goals for happiness, it might be, just making a decision to focus on the growth that we're having right now. Ellen goes into this wonderful, wonderful discussion about trees because I told her, I just feel like right now I'm stunted. I can't do all the things I want to do and I'm so frustrated. And let me tell you, she just blew my mind saying that she wanted to talk about trees and talked about how there's this root structure that grows and it's underground and you can't always see it. And really those roots are the strength and they're the things that ground you. She says it so elegantly and beautifully. I hope that you will watch the full length interview with her because there's so much to learn from her. But it just made me realize, okay, so this is sort of a grounding time for me. I may not have all of the outward things that I want to be doing. I might not be able to be full steam ahead right now. I just don't have the capacity to do it. But what I am able to do is get really, really grounded on the things that matter to me. So I'm making better goals. So I hope these things were helpful to you. We have so much more to say. There's so much more that I want to share with you. But again, I want to keep this pretty bite-sized. If you like what you heard, follow me on my podcast. Just search for the Leadership Coaching Group podcast. It's on pretty much all the platforms. Or you can just go to my website, theleadershipcoachinggroup.com/podcast. I'd love to hear what you think about this whole thing. Please find me on Instagram, Facebook, and let me know what you think. If there's any more information that you'd like to see, if you like these video webinars, let me know. I'm happy to put together more for you. However I can serve you and help you lead your life through this time, that's what I'm here for. Thank you so much.